Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about procrastination, specifically around exams related to your field, related to the industry that you're in, and the exams that you should really do and the certifications that you really do want, but you just can't quite get around to it, or you can't quite get the motivation to do it. So as you might know if you follow my channel, and if you don't, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. But if you don't already know, I have many different certifications. I have passed many Microsoft certifications, and many Microsoft certifications I have failed. But I haven't always been that way. When I first got into IT and when I first came out of school and when I was studying at university, I was not one of those people that was always trying to further my career and try and get certifications and learn new things and do a course. Or I was very much the person that was just not bothered to do any of that. So for example, my university degree was a 3-year degree. It actually took me, I think, almost 7 years to complete. And that's just because I would procrastinate and I would decide that I was going to do one subject, and then I would just not even bother studying for one subject, and I end up not passing that final exam and I'd have to retake it later. It was very much just one of those people that was just trying to get by, and I didn't really care about, I did care about, furthering my career and getting better, but I didn't really want to do anything about it. I just wanted the easier route. I just wanted it to fall into my lap. So I think it's fair to say that I am a procrastinator by nature. So I think that I really had to beat that out of me to start getting my exams done and to start furthering my career, to start getting the certifications that I really needed to move within my career and to improve myself and to improve my skills in IT, and to sort of try and get to where I wanted to be by the time I was 30 or something like that. I never really had an age in mind, but I did want to sort of get to a certain pay bracket or get to a certain position by a certain age. And I think a lot of people will experience that within their career and within their lifetime. So I'll start by telling you guys how procrastination affected me, and then we'll get into some of the things that I did to sort of build into that good rhythm and to start getting into my certifications and exams, and to sort of try and leave the procrastination aside. The truth is, I still am a procrastinator. I like to leave things to the last minute. I like to have that pressure that you feel when you really need to get something done by a certain time. I think I thrive on that. But what we need to think about is how we can use it to our advantage. So how did procrastination affect me? So let's start with when I was at university. When I was at university, I never studied for any exam. I never did my exams on time. I never did my projects on time. I was always leaving things to the last minute. I was very much the type of person that would be at the university library at like 2 in the morning trying to finish a project that was due the following day. So that's the type of person I was. It really affected my university. I didn't study, and I got through university just by the skin of my teeth. So it wasn't like I was amazing at uni. I would just sort of scrape by. But I think if I had applied a lot of these things that I know now, I would have actually done very well, because I would have been able to use a lot of that procrastination to my advantage. So then after university, and maybe during the university as well, when I was working in the IT field, I was doing no self-learning. I wasn't doing any sort of certifications for Microsoft. I wasn't sort of doing anything for networking. I wasn't doing anything related to IT outside of work. So what that meant was that my colleagues were out there getting certifications and learning new things and taking on courses, while I was sort of just left doing what I was doing. And I think that during that time, it was fine because I was very distracted. I was very busy. I was a lot younger at the time, didn't have kids, had a lot more friends that I would hang out with after work and after university. It was a different time of my life. It's not that I regret it. I'm just saying that, things change, and if I knew what I knew back then, I probably would have done a lot more self-learning. So self-learning was one thing that I lacked in. Another thing that I did too much of was I did too much gaming. So being at uni and working part-time and going to uni full-time, I was doing a lot of games. I was playing a lot of Counter-Strike, a lot of Modern Warfare, Call of Duty. So all those games that gamers used to play before. That's what I was doing, and I was just doing probably way too much of it. I also kept changing jobs, so I wasn't always in IT. I've done many different things. I've been an electrician, I've been a mechanic, I've worked at Woolworths stacking shelves, I've worked in insulation companies, like roof insulation companies. I've done lots of little bits and pieces everywhere. Took me a while to first get into IT and decided that's what I wanted to do, but it just took me landing that one job where I really sort of just changed my mind. So why did I want to stop procrastinating? I really wanted to just better myself, get a move on, get some certifications so that I can start to build myself. I really just had this idea in my head that I wanted to be a person of authority within a tech field. So it's not that I wanted to be the person that turns around and says to you, you must do it this way, you must do it that way. I just wanted to have that sort of, that thing that people think about you, like, you know, Elias Addy is really good at doing X or Y in the industry. So when we think of that X or Y, then we should go straight to him. I just always wanted to have that feeling, and I knew that I would never get that feeling unless I started to do some self-learning and started to get some certifications and do some courses and really just build my character, and really just, you know, let it be known that I'm doing these things and that I am actually able to take something on and take it on myself and really learn it and absorb it and become the best at it. The first thing that I learned was that you always need to make a plan. So at the time when I was studying, I remember I had like a whole set of exams that I wanted to do. And what I would do is I would set myself a deadline. It's easy to say to yourself, yeah, let's set a deadline. But really, like, it actually takes a bit of effort to set a deadline. I think I used to just sit there and write a date on the whiteboard. Like I would write, I don't know, the 8th of August or something like that. And that would be my deadline. But it didn't really have any sort of impact if I went past that deadline. So I'd sit there and I'd be like, oh, yeah, okay, it's the 7th of August. Tomorrow's the deadline. I'm not finished. And I wouldn't really care. So what I started doing was booking my exams. So what I would do is I would go and I would say, okay, I'm going to give myself 5 weeks worth of time to study. And I'm going to set my exam date for the 8th of August. And I would actually just book it. Regardless what happens, I'm going for that exam on the 8th of August. That's the idea that I had in my head. So then there's a bit of financial impact as well, because if you miss that deadline and you don't do the exam, or you fail the exam, or you haven't studied enough for the exam so you don't go, then you have a financial impact as well because you've paid for that exam. So I would make a plan. So I would say, okay, on the 8th of August, I'm going to go for the exam. And then that way I have that hard date where I'm doing the exam. And then I would say, okay, so now I have to study for the next 6 weeks to make sure I can pass that exam. Then what I would do is I would divide up my days. So I think I learned this somewhere on YouTube once upon a time, but I sort of was already doing it anyway. I like to divide up my days. So especially before, when I was working in a full corporate job, in the office all the time and I had to be there, couldn't work remotely, what I would do is I would try and do an early shift. So I would try and be in the office between 7 a.m. till 3 p.m. or 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. or something like that. Because back then my commitments to work weren't that huge. So I could get away with doing like a 7 till 3 or an 8 till 4 or something like that. Whereas now I'm doing a lot more hours, but that's just the way of the world. Anyway, so I would divide up my day. So I'll do 7 till 3. And then I would think about it like, I would divide my day into 2. So I would say, okay, from 7 till 3, I belong to the company. All that time is the company's time. But from 3 till 7, that's 4 hours that I would have to do whatever I like. So that would be like the second part of my day. So one day, and I'd split it up into 2. So part A and part B. Part B would be the time when I have to study. So what I would do is at 3 p.m. every day, I'd book a meeting room in the office. So I'd book a meeting room from 3 till 5 or 3 till 6 or something like that. And I would make sure that at that time, I pick up all my things away from my desk. I'd walk into that room with just what I needed to study, and I'd sit there and I'd study for my exam for a couple of hours, sometimes 3 hours, sometimes 2 hours. It really just depended how I felt that day. And then I'd pack up and go to the gym and go home or something like that. So I really just felt like by dividing up the day, I felt like in the morning I always knew what I was doing, and I was able to sort of focus when I was in part B of my day. The other thing is actually committing that time. So I would actually sit there and I would say to myself, I'm not going to take anything with me into that room for studying unless I need it to study. So I'd leave things like my phone and my laptop, and I'd just take, I like to have paperwork, I don't know about you guys, but I'd take my booklet that I've printed and I'd sit there and I'd make notes with pen and paper, because that's how I feel like I learn better that way. And then I would just really commit that time. So I would have no distractions whatsoever until I'm finished those couple of hours of study, and then I'd be able to do whatever I like. Also had to make many sacrifices. So rather than sitting there on a weekend and having lunch with my friends or going out for coffee in the evening, or waking up early on a Saturday to go for breakfast or something like that, I would actually just commit some of that time to studying. So rather than actually going out with my friends, I would say, okay, look, I'm going to work or study on Saturday morning so that maybe in the evening I can have a bit of fun, but I would have to sacrifice something. You can't have everything, unfortunately. So you need to pick what's more important to you. I would always like to sort of split it up so that I had a bit of a balance. So for example, on a Friday night, I would continue doing my 2-part day. So in the day, I would work from 7 to 3, and then I would study from 3 to 6. And then maybe I'll go out for a bit on Friday night from 6 to 8 or whatever. But I'll make sure that I am still fresh for the next day. So Saturday I can do a bit of study as well, because I think it's very important to keep your momentum on the weekends as well. Otherwise, Saturday and Sunday, you sort of just get lazy and you do nothing, and then you end up feeling a bit lazy on Monday as well. So as I mentioned before, the whiteboard, I think it is actually a really good idea to have a whiteboard. Maybe don't just sit there and write deadlines on it, but it is good to have goals on your whiteboard. So when I was trying to get into my principal consultant role, I did actually draw up this big whiteboard of all the steps that it's going to take to get there. So some of the steps were get this exam, get this certification done, then move into this role, then aim for this job title and this pay. And every time I would achieve one of those things, I'd give it a small tick. And I will try and break down those goals a lot, so you have a lot more goals, because it's very rewarding when you go in and you just tick a box, and you tick a box and say, yep, I've done that, yep, I've done that, yep, I've done that. It feels good to see a bit of reward. Very good idea if you sit there and break them all up into smaller details and then tick them off. Sometimes if your goals are too big and they're too far, then you might feel like you're never achieving them because you're always sort of chasing your tail. So if you have 4 different exams that lead to one certification, I would have a goal for each exam and the certification. So I would have 5 goals in total, and I'd sit there and I'd tick them off each time I've done them. And then same with your pay bracket, same with your job description. If you want little changes in there, then make those little changes. So, if you want to go from a service desk analyst to a desktop engineer, that can be one of your goals. You don't have to go straight from a service desk analyst to a senior system engineer. That's an unrealistic goal. You're never going to be ticking that box. Celebrate your wins. So make sure that when you actually do tick off those boxes, make sure that you actually have some sort of celebration. So yeah, life is serious, but it's also fun. So if you want to actually be able to feel like, rewarded, and you want to feel like you are doing something and making something of yourself, you need to celebrate those wins. Otherwise, what are you doing it for? You need to be able to celebrate once you achieve something. So one thing I would suggest, I used to do this a lot, if I feel like I have achieved an exam or achieved a certification on a Friday or something like that, I would go out on Friday night. But maybe more importantly, I just wouldn't do any study over the weekend. I'd have fun, I'd relax a bit. That's a bit of a reward. The last thing is to be accountable. So make yourself accountable. You're only doing this for you. And I had this conversation a lot with a lot of my colleagues and friends in the IT industry. You can't expect things to just fall into your lap, and you're all of a sudden on a great pay bracket with the exact job role that you wanted. You need to actually be accountable and try and achieve those yourself. You need to actually set goals and say to yourself, I want to do this, and I want to do this because X and Y, and if I don't do this, then this is going to happen. I think it's really good to sort of start to learn that accountability very early. It's very easy to get into the habit of expecting that the company you work for, the business you work for, actually owes you something just because you've been there for so long. I think I see a lot of people in the industry that just get stuck because they're expecting something to happen, or they're getting promised something, or maybe it's just not working out how they want it, so they just feel a bit upset with the company, and then they don't end up leaving because they feel like they haven't done anything. Be accountable. You know, it's your career, it's your life. If you want to actually make something of yourself and move on and progress in your career and learn something new, then do it. You can't sit there and expect that someone is going to do it for you, or someone's just going to hand it to you on a plate. It's just not how it works, unfortunately. If you want something, get out there, be accountable, and get it done. I think that wraps up my procrastination video. I'm still a procrastinator at heart. Probably took me a couple of weeks to actually make this video. It's been sitting on my list for ages. I hope that you guys can really beat those procrastination habits. Let me know in the comment section below what some of the habits that you've got, and if you're looking for any sort of particular advice, let me know. Otherwise, hit that like button, and I'll see you next time.